Welcome, brand builders. So today we have a very special guest with us, Greg Monaco. He is the founder of Fearless Brands. And as a brand and story coach, he helps people tell magnetic stories to attract the work that they love. And he works with a lot of authors, entrepreneurs, executives, and artists to refine their voice, build their presence, and attract those dream opportunities. And within Fearless Brands, he helps people in their pursuit of getting paid to do the work they love. Now that sounds amazing. Who doesn't want to do the work that they love? That's what we're all here for. So welcome, Greg. Thank you for taking some time to chat with us this morning. Tell us a little bit more about your background in brand marketing. You've done a lot across the years, so would love to hear more about your experience.
Yeah, sure thing, Angelique. It's great to be here. So I have a pretty extensive resume in brand building. I started my career with a small boutique advertising agency, moved to New York City, worked at Ogilvy and Mather for many years, which is a renowned advertising agency. And then I opened up my own brand consultancy in New York City and ran that for 12 years. So I've got a lot of runway here on my career. And this is an exciting new path for me right now.
Love it. Love it. So and I know we chatted briefly about the collective that you've been running in the group within Fearless Brands. Where did the idea for that stem from and how did you get started?
Well, as I was running my brand consultancy, I would always run into entrepreneurs that would pop into our office and tell us about an idea that they had. And I would fall in love with the idea, or I'd fall in love with the entrepreneur, and I'd want to work with them. But it just wasn't feasible with the agency structure that I was running. We were more expensive than they could afford. So I found myself just after hours, just kind of helping them. And that has grown into a passion. I felt like I was really fully self-expressed in doing that. And now Fearless is the latest incarnation of how I'm helping people develop their voice and find their audience and develop the right kind of communication so they can attract more and get paid to do the work they love.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel as though I'm seeing that as far more of a trend, especially on LinkedIn. Even if individuals work for another organization or if they are, an entrepreneur, it's amazing to see how much personal branding and that thought leadership is really coming to focus. Do you think that the pandemic played a big role in that, or what are some of the shifts that you've seen with the role in personal branding in both brand and personal development?
Well, personal branding is not a new concept. Tom Peters wrote an article back in the late 70s, I believe, called The Brand Called You. And the pandemic certainly has, has been sort of a catalyst for the ideas, just because employees today have a lot more agency over, the job market is like going kind of crazy right now. So it just happens to be like a perfect storm for personal branding. People who are interested in creating more marketability for themselves and their ideas. And they're actually seeing so much stuff happening on the social channels. Like, it's free to publish. Whereas before it was sort of a locked gate, like publishing, you had to really enroll the publications and magazines, and if you wanted to get a book done, you had to get publishers, but everything is just do it yourself. So it's the combination of the DIY kind of culture and also the fact that employers are really listening a lot more today to what the employee wants and needs, because employees aren't tolerating the work of the past.
You're exactly right. And I think that's maybe it's from the pandemic in this regard as well, but the idea of remote work and, like you said, having a publishing platform. And I feel as though I love seeing it because really the employees are the ones that are owning, the experience. We're the ones talking and being the ones that are, are set up to change the way that work looks for the future. And while we were kind of forced into this remote life of things, I feel as though giving people more, like you said, agency to own this space, own the publishing platforms, own their voice, is only going to propel the businesses individually as well. I don't know if you have any other thoughts on that, but I think that when you have employees that are passionate about what they do, they're thought leaders in their own space, it also propels your brand. You know, when people understand, where is this person, where do they work, what is the work that they do, and they see, oh, they're at X company. Do you think that there's much of a play on, you know, how that helps maybe lead generation or brand awareness with personal branded employees?
Yeah, Angelique, great point. So I always say you can turn your staff into a sales force, and that's actually broadened into also a recruitment force and a marketing force for
Right.
that matter. So when you're allowing your employees to be fully expressed in what they're really good at, they're happier and more engaged at work, and that becomes magnetic in its own way. So they might not be in a sales function,
Yep.
but maybe they're talking to their friends about what an amazing place it is to work there, and they become your most powerful advocates. So I think there's a lot within the walls of the organization that companies are starting to learn to take advantage of, and not take advantage of in an exploitative way, but just encourage employees to um, drive their own engine with their communications and start to become a thought leader in what they know in their own sort of, I call it zone of genius. And there's just you know, it's a powerful new way to engage employees.
Right. And I think of two things, you know, at Photify, that is a conversation that we're continuing to try to push. And in some organizations, it feels like such a new concept, the idea of having and allowing employees to be part of the brand experience. But I think when, like you said, it just allows the entire organization to be amplified, whether they're in a sales role, they're in a marketing role, or even if they're in a, you know, a research engineering software development role. I think when you give them the power to be, you know, they're investing their time and their energy into your company, give them a platform to speak about the things that they love. And with Photify, we do that from the brand perspective, where it's, you know, here is a platform that you can utilize all these branded assets on behalf of your company. But one of the things that came up for me at some point with that is, you know, it's also the ability to build culture, even from a remote standpoint, when your employees are engaged with their own personal brand and how they're talking and sharing about the work that they do. And I think that's somewhat of a struggle right now from the remote standpoint, is building culture. But I think giving them that that voice and encouraging them to you know, elaborate and amplify what they love doing. It's just, it has been a bit of a struggle in some organizations to have that conversation of giving their employees the keys to talk about the brand and encouraging that. So have you seen much of that in your line of work, as far as when it comes to personal brands within within organizations, if that makes sense?
Yeah. So are you asking, am I noticing like how companies are shifting culture by encouraging personal brands
Yes.
within the organization? I think it's still nascent. I think some organizations embrace it more than others. I still think that there's a lot of trepidation about, oh my gosh, there's the rogue voice out there that can really, it doesn't take much to, you know, you've seen the videos of, you know, employees at a fast food restaurant, like, you know, doing nefarious things with the French fries. You know, there's still a lot of trepidation there.
Right.
But I view that the payoff on encouraging personal branding is outweighs that rogue voice out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's going to be a slow climb, and employers are getting smarter about it for sure.
I would agree to that. And of course, you know, those things happen. You can't control everything. But do you think that there are different ways or even methods that you would recommend for how to maybe have more guardrails on that. And I don't know if that's, a training or, even if you're in a sales role or an engineering role, you have a 20-minute training that you do on understanding social media and how you talk about the brand. Do you have any recommendations on that or things that you've seen there?
Yeah, well, I think you touched on one is, just communication about what's in and what's out, guidelines, making sure that they're well articulated, having someone who is responsible for, ultimately what kind of gets created. It's a tough thing to like govern it.
Yeah.
And encourage it at the same time. So every organization is going to be a little different in how they handle it.
Mm-hmm.
But don't just hand it to somebody who can manage something that's not necessarily easy to manage. You want to find the right person, the right voice, and just make sure that it's articulated what is expected and what is and is not in or off brand.
Yeah, and that's I think brings up another point for me where you also don't want to put so many guardrails where they don't feel the freedom to express the way that they want to. So I think that's a really interesting and fine line that has to, I think, it comes down to organizational change and how you communicate, how people talk about their brand. I mean, I think about in certain positions, media training. Everyone gets media training for, especially in a spokesperson role or a C-suite type role. So why not have that across the board for everybody? Which I think would be an interesting, thing to touch on as more and more people come out and talk about specific subjects while they're working for another company. Elaborating more and expanding more into whether you're working for a company or you're an entrepreneur working for yourself in personal branding, what are some of the other trends that you're seeing right now across how people are talking about personal branding and maybe some of the topics or ways that they're communicating?
Well, one thing I'm noticing, Angelique, is this kind of obsession with followers. And I don't know, my Twitter feed almost daily, I get something about follow my 6 templates and you'll raise your followers by 1,000 by the end of the month. Or on LinkedIn, same kind of claims about generating leads and getting followers. And I think that might be good for some people, but I would say the majority of people, going mass in that way isn't necessarily the right strategy. So the trend that I'm seeing is that people are kind of enamored with the idea of followers, but they aren't really kind of getting a larger perspective on what they're trying to accomplish with their personal brand and their voice. I mean, it may make more sense for you, instead of having 10,000 followers, to have 10 really engaged and evangelistic fans.
Right. That quality over the quantity in that regard.
Yeah. But that's a strategic question,
Sure.
I mean, if you want to be the next Gary Vee, that's all fine and good, but you do have to post 18 times a day. And a lot of us don't have the time to do that.
Consistency. No, and I've actually, I really respected this. It's a blog that I found on, I think it was Medium or Substack, where she's a phenomenal writer, and she just says, don't expect consistency. I write when I really have something important to say. I put a lot of thought into the work that I'm creating. So you might hear from me once a week. You might hear from me 3 times a day. You might hear from me once every 2 weeks, which I thought was really interesting. And I respected it because she's putting her own boundaries on what she's putting out into the world. But it also set those expectations for the viewer. And I mean, I agree. It's like you have to have consistency, but if you have just followers that are not engaging with you, then what's the point of having 10,000 people if you had 100 that comment and share and progress the conversation? And I see that sometimes in even across Instagram and TikTok, where it's like they like the post, but then they put so much thought into what that description of that post is and what they wanted to put out into the world. And then it seems as though people bypassed what they wrote and only focused on a quick image and a quick scroll. So there's the comments of, here's a heart emoji, or here's, a smiley face and always thumbs up. There wasn't an answer to the question that the individual was asking. There wasn't a, here's my thoughts on X. And I absolutely agree. But the thing is that comes up is like, making money with how you present yourself online. In that quality versus quantity, does it come down to eyeballs, to having more leads and that brand awareness? Does that ultimately help you make more money in the long run? And I don't know the answer for that, but what are your thoughts there?
Well, it has to be the right eyeballs. So I launched a Facebook campaign not too long ago, and it didn't do well. And the reason why is because the people who were viewing weren't the right people. The people who were acting on it just weren't the right people. Yeah. And it takes a while to understand who really matters to you. Who are you really trying to engage? Who are you really trying to help? Mm-hmm. And that might be a very small pool of people. If you can identify that person, and we call it personas, but that, I like to bring it down to, like, instead of a target audience, a bullseye. If you can figure that out, then you can have a more of a strategic look at how you're engaging with your social media. So you don't need to flood people with posts every day. Maybe you just need to engage these people in a very particular way.
Exactly. That target persona, having that narrow, that bullseye, who your people are and who you're speaking to, and speaking directly to them.
Yeah.
That's smart. It seems even on TikTok. So I was very late to the game to join TikTok. I have only joined in the last, few months, I think, but it seems as though everybody is like, here's how to gain followers. Here's how to spoof the algorithm. And sometimes there's so much of that I start to wonder, like, is that all your content is about? And that maybe that is the business model. But it seems like there's so much of that, of just trying to trick the algorithms and figure something else out that, I don't know other reasons why I would follow that person, I guess.
Yeah, well, I mean, you're kind of at the mercy of the algorithms and trying. I mean, I'm having fun on TikTok right now as well. And it's kind of a joke in the house that I've got, like, 14 likes or whatever. But it's all fine and good. You want to experiment. You want to try these platforms, see what works, see what the platform does for you, see if you get any kind of engagement. Because it's one thing to like something. It's another thing to comment on it, and then it's an entirely other thing to share it. So you can kind of test things and see how your content is actually stacking up to other people's content out there. And, the trick is, are you, using a gimmick or a stunt to get your likes, or are you, are you more of a machine that just cranks out stuff consistently every week? So there's all kinds of different modalities in how you deliver content, so you can bring people through that engagement cycle of likes, comments, shares.
Right. And I think it's not a one size fits all. I think that you have to know where your audience is, and it could be TikTok, it could be Instagram, maybe it's LinkedIn. For me, I'm somebody that if I don't mind trying out new platforms, but I always think about how much time to invest in each if I'm not seeing a return. And then what is that tipping point of how much time I'm putting into it? Because sometimes you never know if one thing is going to be that thing that takes off. And sometimes it's the most unlikely thing, where I was so excited. We had a family vacation to Disney recently, and I was like so excited to make my first TikTok, this Disney TikTok. And I'm tagging Disney, and I'm like, this is great. This is quality. I love this. And I'm watching my views, I'm watching my likes, and I'm like, oh, they rather see, I think I had another post on some those like salt pods that it's like a relaxing salt pod or whatever. And I got like 2,000 views on this thing. And I'm like,
Easy.
but the Disney was such quality. Why? You got
Yep.
to work the algorithms.
You never know until, so it's almost like, you know, a stand-up comedian, you see, you know, when they're on stage and they're really killing it and they're getting their laughs. Well, there was a gestation period to get to that point that you didn't see. All the brutality of bombing in front of people,
Right.
and writing and refining and getting the timing right.
Totally.
So that's the discipline that you need to think about as a content creator is it's not good until your friends and fans say it's good.
Validation.
Yeah. 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 So, you know, your Disney video is a good example. You think it's great stuff, but it ain't great until they say it's great.
Yes. Yes, exactly. Exactly. And let's transition a little bit more into storytelling because, you know, a lot of your work is in helping people tell their stories. What are, you know, I don't want to go back to platforms because, again, we have to figure out what your platform is. But in storytelling, can you share some of the methods that you use to helping people find their voice in that space?
Yeah, yeah. We talked about one step of it, which is really understanding the bullseye, because the storytelling needs to come from that perspective. But the very first step is getting clear about your own purpose and your quote unquote why. That is kind of is the center of gravity of how you are contributing to others, how you're serving others out of what matters to you. So if you have clarity about that, you know, for example, you know, you love helping. Well, I can tell you from my perspective, I love helping people get paid to do the work they love, but I do that through magnetic storytelling. Okay. So that's my clarity right there. Magnetic storytelling is the path to help people do the work they love. And the people that I'm engaging, that's my bullseye audience. If I have those two things set and I understand that, then I can start to tell stories. The trick is that just like in your Disney example, Angelique, you're telling your story from your point of view, your perspective, which doesn't matter. You need to tell it from their perspective. You have to really understand what kind of pain they are in, and you position yourself as a solution to that problem. That's how you start to create connections. When people see that your content is super valuable for them, they will want to engage with you in whatever form that might be. So that's sort of a storytelling process. It's about you, them, and then the story is the bridge between you and them.
And what I keep hearing is adding value.
Yeah.
Finding ways to add value. And you're right, with the Disney example versus the salt pod. In the salt pod video, I put bullet points as to what the benefits are of this and, you know, what my thoughts were on it. So I provided value to them and perhaps, you know, the curiosity of what is this and how is it going to benefit me versus my Disney video. I loved it because it was fun and it was exciting and it told the story of my experience throughout my trip. But you're right. What was the value at the end of the day that provided other than you know, maybe this is soothing to the eyes?
Yeah. 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 You were projecting your own inner passions for Disney, whereas with the salt pod, you're giving people some value of things they didn't know about this particular thing. So I can see that. I can see how that kind of rolled out, but you really never know. Still, I mean, you can still strategize and think this is great stuff. You have to leave room. You have to leave room for experimentation because stuff will bubble up. You know, my son did a video when he was like 10 years old, posted it on YouTube, and he had this little thing called a moon bounce ball, and the thing was it's like a bouncy ball, but he was doing trick shots with it and stuff. And the kid got like 10,000 views on it. And it was sort of like legendary within our family.
Yeah.
And it's like, hold on a second. I'm doing these videos and I'm barely getting likes. And he does a moon bounce video and gets 10,000, you know. there wasn't, he was providing entertainment for people, which is of value.
Of
You know,
course.
so maybe your Disney video might be viewed as entertainment. Was it good entertainment? I don't know. I'm trying to provide value in the realm of personal branding. You know, trying to help people understand the the tricks and the hacks that you can do to develop your brand, or even just understand what a brand is. So, that's the value that I'm bringing. So again, it's a strategic question.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I think, you nail it when you talk about helping people find their purpose. I'm reading a book by Laird Hamilton right now, where he describes having purpose. That's essentially your North Star in life and business. And that is something that you follow no matter what. And like you said, I mean, even entertainment provides value, but you have to also leave room for having fun with what you're doing. And that experimentation, I think, is part of that, because at the end of the day, this Disney video, I thought it was great. I had a lot of fun creating it. And that alone was a satisfaction for me. Now, was it my North Star? Was I, providing value for others and anything other than entertainment? Not sure, but absolutely finding room for just providing space for experimentation, because you never know. I mean, that is pretty impressive. 10,000 views on a Moonball video. He was probably really stoked about that.
He was, but he took it down because, he's a little older now and he was embarrassed by it. So it's too bad we can't find it. I wish we still
play
had
it
it
at the wedding one day.
Yeah. But you raise a good point about having fun. I mean, if you're not having fun, it's not going to be good.
No.
People are going to just kind of sense that vibe, and Laird Hamilton, I mean, he's the kind of guy that I believe he knows how to have fun. So
I would absolutely agree. So I think bringing it a little bit more full circle, how do viewers get involved with Fearless Brands, and how do we get a hold of you there?
Yeah. Well, my website, letsgomonaco.com. You can find Fearless right there in the navigation bar. But, the idea is it's a community of people that are really there to help. It's almost like an incubator of sorts to help you, develop your voice and start to build magnetism for the work you love. And, the hardest thing about doing that is, for the most part, you're alone in that process. Well, I certainly have skills and techniques and things that I can teach people, but you need to have the support system behind you to help encourage you when it gets tough, and also give you feedback when you need it. So that goes for, just like we were talking about, Angelique, with content, developing content. Hey, how does this sound? Hey, what would you do here? And people actually, do talks on the platform to help prototype some of their ideas. So it's super helpful in just developing the pathways for your own success.
Love it. And accountability, I mean, that means a lot, because you learn so much from it too.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
And you don't want to, be overwhelmed with, having everybody's input on something, but sometimes if you have something that you want to put out there, and it's good to have all the educational points around how people perceive it too, especially in this day and age. How is something that I'm trying to communicate perceived by others? But it's also very motivating to have other people that are like, this is great, get out there, post this is awesome. So I think there's a lot of value in that. And I think those type of communities are something that people continue to look for right now.
Yeah, I hope so. It's been valuable for me, for sure. I mean, we're all unfinished work, and we're all evolving beings and creative beings. So if you're not out there pushing and trying new things and getting the encouragement you need to step outside, stagnation, as David Ogilvy has said, is the death knell. So this is a perfect place and a safe to fail environment to try some of this stuff.
Yep. I like it. Well, thank you for joining us again. I will definitely have the link to Let's Go Monaco. Is that correct?
Yeah. Letsgomonaco.com. Yep.
Awesome. So I'll definitely have the link in the description. And excited to hear other people's, opinions on some of the topics that we talked about today, and look forward to keeping in touch. This was a great opportunity to sit down and chat with you this morning.
My pleasure.